Everybody, welcome to this week's Paddock Pass podcast. We're recording, as usual, in very diverse locations in the build-up to the British Grand Prix and the resumption of 2024 MotoGP. In some ways, it's felt like a long break. In other ways, it's been a necessary break, I guess you could say. I'm delighted to be joined once more by the irrepressible Neil Morrison and the man with unquenchable thirst for work, information, anything else, Mr. David Emmett.
Motorbikes.
Dave,
Motorbikes.
yes. I noticed you made a personal blog post on the joys of riding a motorcycle. I've yet to read it because I'm currently in the luxurious surrounds of the Toon Hotel in Lommel, having worked the Belgian MXGP and was blessed with sunshine. So I'm hoping the similar climate graces Silverstone this coming weekend. But have you finished your taxes and have you been out on said motorbike again?
No and no. So that's my job for today, and then tomorrow I shall be on the motorbike because I'm heading over to England, and it's going to be a bit weird because for Silverstone, because normally I used to stay with my parents, but now I can't stay with my parents because they're both dead and someone else is living in the house, and so now I'll be staying in a little village near Banbury, which actually sounds really sort of nice, but it's just going to be a little bit odd.
Maybe you should just pitch up there anyway. Just park in the front garden and say, well,
pitch me tent. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm sure there'll be understanding people. Neil, where are you currently?
Bangor, Northern Ireland. I thought I would touch base with the family before heading over to Silverstone on Wednesday. Doing a quick whistle stop tour of the lovely Emerald Isle, and then firing over to England on Wednesday, I believe.
Is that why you're looking even more sleepy-eyed? Is it because we made you get up an ungodly hour to do this podcast on a Monday morning?
Exactly. I mean, 9:30 is already an ungodly hour, but it's actually 8:30 here, so that's my excuse for the slightly disabled appearance.
My apologies. I thought you would have done like a 5K run by now, maybe had a swim in the bracing sea there next door, but I see I'm off the mark.
Yeah, I'm not Adam Wheeler. I think you're mistaken me with you.
Yeah, I wish. On the show this week, a quick reminder to everybody watching on YouTube, like and subscribe and you'll get updates straight away when we've got a brand new podcast on that particular platform. But we've got a special interview that Dave and Neil have done with none other than former World Superbike champion, Grand Prix rider, TNT presenter Neil Hodgson. He's going to talk a little bit about the current state of MotoGP, as well as riding at Silverstone in its many different forms, and just generally the state of play in motorcycle racing in Great Britain at the moment. So that's coming up. A big thanks to KTM, of course, Fly Racing, and Rental Street. If you need any accessories for your road bike or street bike, then check out rental.com. It really is the place to look for really decent quality accessories. There you go. We've been running a competition, if you've been listening to the podcast in recent weeks, based around the British Grand Prix at Silverstone this weekend, and we've got some winners. 3 pairs of tickets that we gave away to our small group of Paddock Insider subscribers on Patreon. And I'm very happy to say that the winners are, let me look at my list, Etsy Katzman, Racing Armchair, and Caroline Olsen. So we're going to be getting in contact with you guys. Dave is a master of spreadsheets. He loves them. So he put all of our Patreon Insiders into a big list. And then I don't know how you randomly selected something, Dave. I'm sure you have some fancy app that just turns the whole screen into a whirlwind.
There is a no. There's basically a spreadsheet function. So which I even had to Google, much to my shame. I should know these things by heart, but I don't.
Now, is there anything that you love in Bangor as much as Dave loves a spreadsheet? Apart from bread. Susan, your good mother.
Yeah, family aside, friends aside, I mean, a couple of bars that do, I would argue, some of the best Guinness that I've ever had. I mean, I do love that quite a lot. Potato bread, nice Armagh cheddar cheese. I mean, there's quite a lot of things. I could go on here for a while, but I think I'll stop boring everyone.
Yeah, potato bread sounds absolutely class. I'm hungry already. I haven't had my breakfast yet.
Dave is sinking into his firm Irish ways. I mean, he's talking about stuff that I've got no idea about. Now, what's your opinion on Guinness Red? Is that like a cardinal sin, or is it actually, was all right?
I have to say I don't even know what it is. What is it? it's a type
They
of
still
ale.
do it. It was like kind of the ale version of Guinness. It was pretty
Oh,
good. Maybe I'm showing my age.
yeah, sacrilege, I would say. Yeah,
Well,
burn
I'm
burn the
disappointed they
heathen
don't
at the
make
stake.
Caffreys anymore. Yeah, okay. I'll leave my Guinness knowledge to one side for the moment. Listen, just a quick couple of things, guys, before we head on to the interview with Neil. There's been a few things coming up. Joan Mir's contract extension with HRC, another 2 years of punishment for a former world champion. Dave, hardly any surprise at all. I think it was our friend and colleague Audio Puigdemont who broke the news about it, if I remember correctly. Uh, why? Why is Joan taking this step? Does he know something that we all don't, or is he just maybe eyeing a new boat or something? Thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, there's three reasons. There's the reason he was telling us at the Saxon Ring, which was that he said basically, like I feel like I haven't finished here, I haven't completed, I haven't achieved what I set out to achieve. And to leave would be to leave now would be to leave something unfinished, and he didn't like that feeling. However, he also made the very strong point that, as he puts it, nobody leaves Honda in a better condition than when they arrived. By which he means basically you go to Honda, you have some horrible results, and then it's really, really difficult to come out of it, looking great. Because that's the reality is that he didn't have very many other options. The options that he would have had would have been for a significantly less money, probably an order of magnitude, that sort of scale, because he just doesn't have the results. It's hard to convince someone to throw a lot of money at you if you are scrabbling around for a single point.
Neil, what are your thoughts? I mean, in one way, it's good that a rider of Joan's ability is still in MotoGP, that he's not disillusioned enough to chuck in the towel or do something completely different. But obviously, it's good for Honda because they're going to have someone who's worked with a motorcycle at its lowest point, and therefore that must be some sort of gauge of reference, you'd imagine.
Yeah, I mean, you'd have to say it's probably a pretty good move for Honda. Although I just do worry about Joan because he just looks or he has looked quite miserable over the last couple of months. It's been a pretty wretched 2.5 years of his career, and you wonder really if there was a possibility to go elsewhere. Why didn't choose that? Because he has just looked so miserable. I mean, yeah, I mentioned maybe last week that better times are surely ahead for Honda, but they are so far away that it is really hard to imagine in the next 2 years them getting up towards anything close to competitive. So I find it quite bizarre. Yeah, I just hope it works out for the best because we do know that Honest Mir is a class rider, but when you're so far off the pace for 2.5 years, I don't know whether you can still be classified as one of the top riders in the class.
Last week we had Trackhouse Racing team principal David Ebrivio on the show, and he told us that the second rider alongside Raul Fernandez was going to be from Moto2, which had all three of us. And I'm sure people who listen to the podcast thinking, okay, well, there's the door open for Joe Roberts. But then, the name Ogura suddenly popped up as being heavily linked with a second saddle on the Aprilia. On a scale of 1 to 10, David Neal, how surprised are you at that name really coming to the forefront?
I mean, I would say on a scale of 1 to well, put it this way. Linked with Trackhouse, I'm about it would be about 8 out of 10. Sort of linked with MotoGP, not really, because everyone's been looking at Ogura as the next Japanese rider. And it really looks like Ogura's decided that he wants to dodge the bullet, which is the LCR Honda Inamitsu team, which everyone had basically seated him on that seat because of the sponsor, because the sponsor wants a Southeast Asian rider or an Asian rider. And that's just, it just wasn't going to, Ogura has looked at the Honda and in contrast to Joan Mir thought, no, that's not for me. I'd rather get on a bike which is competitive.
Yeah, I think, I had a couple of good offers to stay in Moto2. he said after the German Grand Prix that he was going to speak to Honda about the possibility. He was sort of edging towards maybe towards stepping up to MotoGP next year with them. He told me that after the race, but clearly there were other options on the table for him as well. And he's had a great season in Moto2 so far, building himself back up after a tough year last year, which was blighted by injury. And he was third at the Sachsenring, which I think bodes quite ominously for the rest of the Moto2 field, because Sachsenring is usually a terrible track for him. So the fact that he was so strong there, I think, really shows that Ogura can go on and win the championship this year. And yeah, it's a bit of a, well, I guess it's not really a left field pick. I mean, he is fighting for the Moto2 championship. But yeah, as Dave said, I think everyone was just sort of expecting there to be maybe a step up into the Honda squad with LCR. So I guess it's kind of canny. He is 23 years old. That's 4 years younger than Joe Roberts. He's obviously not American. Joe and his team, I think, were really pushing for that saddle with Trackhouse. I've been told that there was maybe even the chance of Joe bringing the title sponsor from America to the team for next year, but still they decided against it. So, I mean, surprising in some ways, but Ogura is an exciting young rider, and he's shown in Moto2 this year that he's deserving of MotoGP next year.
I mean, to have another Japanese rider in the class brings diversity. I just find it quite an odd rider selection for a team that really wants to focus on their image, their presentation, and doing things in a different way. You would think like a native English speaker would be, maybe a requisite there. And having Joe Roberts is an incredibly natural link. But I mean, they're investing sort of in youth. I mean, that was another sort of subject as well. Trackhouse wanted to aim for a rider that could deliver results right away, and having 2025 RSGPs would have allowed them to get straight into the mix. But anyway, we'll see. I guess that also means that Miguel Oliveira is pretty much confirmed being out, and at Pramac Yamaha, you'd assume that's going to be the next set of press releases coming our way. Dave, by the time the podcast is out and we're on the way to Silverstone, there could already be some more announcements, right?
Oh, yeah. No, I mean, we know there's going to be more announcements because a whole bunch of people have said, yeah, we're expected to be able to make an announcement around Silverstone time. So, by the time you listen to this, dear listener / viewer, you already know more than us, because it's in the week leading up to Silverstone, there's going to be a whole bunch of like staggered releases of who's going where. So let's see. I'm sort of vaguely monitoring my email inbox just in case something comes in before we finish recording.
Well, we can define this as a rental street session. It was great to get some time with Neil Hodgson, and we'll lead straight into our interview with him right now.
Hello and welcome to the Paddock Pass podcast, Neil Hodgson. And I have a stereo Neil because I've got Neil Morrison with me as well. So how are you going?
I can't even say I'm the best Neil on the podcast this week, which is quite a tough thing to live with.
Well, I don't know. That's debatable. If you go on Twitter, I think you could be. Definitely.
Yeah, but let's not get into an argument about who's got the most World Superbike Championships, shall we?
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. First of all, Neil, thanks a lot for coming on the podcast. It's always a delight to have you and to talk to you. I have been listening to your podcast recently, the Ducati Diaries. Really, really enjoyed it. So, first of all, tell us a little bit about that. How did it happen, and who could we enjoy listening to? I mean, you've had Casey Stoner, you've had Chaz Davies.
Yeah, basically what happened, I was approached by Ducati UK, who I've got a great relationship with, obviously, and they said, would I be interested in doing a small podcast series? We're not too sure how many we're going to do, between 5 and 10. And the idea was to get some really good Ducati guests, people that have worked in or with Ducati over the years, and just do something a little bit different. Like I say, we've got good access because I can get these people, and try and get some good stories. And that's basically the plan. So I've done like a hit list of people that wanted on the podcast, as you can imagine. And when I was first told about it, number one was Casey Stoner, because I know Casey well, like you know him. and I know what a great guy he is, and I also know what a load of stick he's got over the years. So I wanted to get him on, and I wanted him to tell his story a little bit, which he did. I did Chaz Davis last week, which was really good. Chaz is Chaz, so Chaz is just a bloody hell all-round good guy, isn't he? And then I've just done Davide Tardozzi, which was fascinating. I can't believe how honest he was. And as far as I know, nothing's going to be edited out. So I think, not that it sounds harsh, but I'd say that's the best one yet. That's the one that I found most interesting. Some of the things he said on that surprised me a little bit. So his take on certain things.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the thing that sort of surprised me about the Casey Stoner one is the fact that he came knocking on the door of your motorhome asking for asking advice as a wee 14, 15-year-old.
Yeah, and he was so polite, but so confident. Like strangely, the opposite of how he turned out in if you think in his career with, I guess, having self-confidence and being around people. I mean, I thought, God, how ballsy, this young 14, 15-year-old kid knocking on my door, going, have you watched me yet? And he wasn't cocky, he was polite. But I still don't think I emphasised just how impressed I was, though, when I eventually went to watch him at Cadwell Park. Yeah. And I watched this kid who, like I said, he just looked like a MotoGP rider then, when he was 14. He looked head and shoulders above the rest, which he was, and continued to be, as it turned out. But fascinating. It's a funny story, isn't it, that I was one of Casey Stoner's heroes. That's my claim to fame now.
It doesn't really get much better than that, does it?
No, in fact, I'm going to get a T-shirt printed up on it. I can. Yeah.
Forget the World Superbike Championship.
Yeah, exactly.
That's nothing.
Because the other thing that really struck me was, again, and I think this is true for all elite athletes, and that fans don't really realise, is what a miserable existence it is being at the very, very top, because you're just, and it's not, as like both you and Casey were explaining, it's not the pressure from outside, it's the pressure internally, just always trying to do everything perfect and get better and better all of the time, and everything you do feeling like a complete failure. Even like, oh yeah, I won that race, but I could have had a bigger gap, sort of thing. That kind of pressure is just really, really sort of difficult to deal with.
Yeah, it's a funny one, because you always feel like you can't moan about your job, because when you're a professional motorcycle racer, it's like, it's the dream. Of course it's a dream. It's what you've always wanted. The reality of when you're right at the top, and I got to the top of World Superbikes, I didn't get to the top of MotoGP, but the pressure you put yourself under and what it takes to get there and stay there is it's grueling. My number one question I get asked when I'm out and about on the street is, and it always makes me smile, because the person that asks me the questions always smile. And they always go, "Hey, I bet you miss it." And I always look and I go, "No, not one bit. I don't miss it at all." Because I know how hard it is. I know the sacrifices that it takes to get there, to stay there. I don't want to go down that road again. I'm so happily retired from racing, because, and I know people say, "Oh, you're hard on yourself sometimes." I play my own career down. Look, I look back at my career and think I had a fantastic career. I achieved miles more than I thought I would do. The glass is half full. I'm so pleased. But there's one thing I know throughout my career was, I always was dedicated. I give 100%. And I knew that the day I retired, I'd be able to retire a happy man. And that's where I'm at. And I know there's been much more successful racers, and there will always be much more successful racers. There's plenty that did a lot worse. But the glass is half full. Like life is good, isn't it? So I've been super fortunate.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you still get to hoon around racetracks on motorbikes, but this time you don't have to. It's not a complete disaster if you make one tiny mistake going into turn 6.
Yeah, exactly. Which I normally do.
Right. Well, speaking of MotoGP, obviously we've had half a season. Give us your sort of like 2-minute summary of what we've seen so far and what we were expecting. Because I know we were talking at the like when Mark signed with Ducati, we were messaging going, well, that's it, that's the championship over, more or less, isn't it? But it hasn't been that way. I mean, he's doing exceptionally well, but he's doing exceptionally well for someone who's just switched bikes. But he's still not. He's just not ruling the roost as we thought he might.
Yeah, I think what's happened over the season is, for me personally, I've learned a lot, and it's made me realise maybe I personally have been giving Pecco Bagnaia and Jorge Martin a little bit of disservice. They're at a level, of course, Pecco's won the last two World Championships. Jorge Martin nearly won it last year. Of course, they're fighting at the front, but I genuinely thought Marc Marquez had a margin, had a big margin still. I believe that, and I thought even on a year-old bike, he will smoke them, he'll destroy them, and obviously that's not been the case. Marc's been very impressive, and obviously Marc's been, let's say, slightly unlucky because the gap between the 23 and 24 Ducatis is quite big. I speak to Frankie Carcetti, as I know you two do, and he tells me some things sort of on the record, and there's some things off the record where there is definitely, the gap's bigger than it's ever been, really. I think between 1 year and the next. So and basically the fact that Ducati have signed Marc Marquez for next year shows that what Marc's doing on that 23 is really impressive. But still, to go back to what I started saying, Francesco Bagnaia is very, very impressive.
Yeah.
When I spoke to Davide Tardozzi this week, he was saying, if you look back to 2021, he won late on in the season at Aragon, and he said from that point on, he's basically been a winning machine. If you look back over since, like I say, that was, what was that, September maybe of 2021. He's won a lot of races. He's not quite won 50% of his races, but he's not far off. It could be about 40%. He's a winning machine, and when he doesn't win, he's either on the podium or he's made the odd mistake. And obviously, as journalists, we focus on the mistakes because that's the story. Oh, maybe this man is beatable. So he's sort of he's made it interesting for us. He's made it hard for himself at times, but I've gone a long way, like I do if you listen to my commentary, I've gone a long way around about saying that Francesco Bagnaia is better than I thought. He's actually he's an Eddie Lawson. You will look back at Francesco Bagnaia's career when he retires, and we'll all go, bloody hell, we didn't quite realise how good he was. I think he's one of them because, as you guys know, there's no frills with him. He walks down the paddock. There's no entourage. Is there? There's no, like, you obviously when Lorenzo used to walk around the paddock, there was always loads of people stood around and dancing and all the weird stuff.
Yeah.
By the way, I hate all this dancing after race wins. That's and I hate now it's like in the garages how they're trying to out celebrate each other. This means more to us because I don't know. It's all a bit too much. That I don't know how you guys feel about it. What are your thoughts on that? Just a bit. No, it's a bit try hard, isn't it?
It is.
It depends on the dancing, but some stylish dancing I think can just about get away with it, but we don't really see too much of that in MotoGP. Hodgie, I'm sure you agree with this, but one of the most impressive things I've seen in Bagnaia this year is just how he's kind of fronted up to the challenge of Marc. Earlier in the season, you think of obviously Portugal where they crashed together, and that didn't turn out so well. But then how he reacted at Jerez, there was just a clear sign where he was trying to say to Marc, like, look, you can try and do whatever you want, but I'm not going to budge. And the way he's kind of fronted up to that challenge, I think, has been maybe one of the more impressive things we've seen from him this year.
Yeah, absolutely. Because we know that Bagnaia's methodical, Lorenzo-esque, he can lead a race, and we've seen him battle in the past, but to go head to head with Marc, and to the point where the Portugal crash, I've watched it enough times, and again, I've got some inside information that confirms that I know I'm right with what I'm going to say now. That crash was caused by Bagnaia. Now, I've got a lot of hate saying that, but Bagnaia had all the information. That's what we say. He had all the information. Marc's gone past. He can see Marc. He knows Marc's going to cut back, because that's what every rider does. And he's accelerated at a point to block him, but he knows there's going to be contact. He's caused that contact, basically. Yeah. But that's impressive, because he's prepared to do that and basically, obviously, throw away all them points. But that was showing Marc, no, I'm not going to shut the throttle. So I'm going to do to you what you would do to me. And that's the impressive bit. And it's one thing saying you're going to do it. It's one thing talking to your team manager, oh, I'm going to do it. but there's a world championship on the line, and he was prepared to do that and take no points to prove a point, and he did it really well, didn't he?
Yeah, and I think there's a little bit of footage, which I'm sure will come out towards the end of the year. I think Dorna have some behind-the-scenes footage where the two of them meet outside the steward's office in Portugal that Sunday. And, Mark is pretty much laying into Pecco. And Pecco stands his ground and gives it back to him. So I'm sure when that comes out towards the end of the year, you'll see that, okay, he's kind of got balls when he's being affronted by someone as well. So, pretty cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is actually a really good point about sort of like standing your ground, because that was what Marcus always done in the past, sort of, literally just physically intimidating people. I think the other question I want to ask is, what do you think of, well, two questions about Jorge Martin. Where do you see him? Because to me, I think he's made an enormous step this year. He was really good last year, but he's made a big step this year. He's fixed a lot of his problems. And what about the gamble of going to Aprilia?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I agree with what you said. He's made another step this year. He's been incredible. And if you think about it, he was how many laps away from winning in Germany? Was it 2 laps?
Yes. Yeah.
Was it just, yeah. So, I mean, he was 2 laps away from it being another incredible weekend. He was going to lead the championship, and he was, amazing. And it's fine margins. Like, Pecco was closing in on him, but those guys were so on the limit. So on the limit. And we get used to watching them being on the limit, but it's easy to criticise someone like Jorge Martin after that crash, but I didn't criticise him. He's a guy who's doing all he can. That wasn't him, in my opinion, not being able to cope with the pressure. That was just a reality of, look, to win this World Championship, you are on a knife edge, and there's 2 laps to go, and I'm going to do whatever it takes. Anyway, so that was that. The signing with Aprilia, for me, makes total sense, because he wasn't going to stay with Ducati. Once he realised he wasn't in the factory team, he had to get on to another factory team. And he deserved to get on a factory team. He deserved 100%. To be the main man in a factory team, get a factory team salary, get a factory team all around him, a full manufacturer around him. So there was nowhere else really for him to go, was there? I mean, KTM looked like they're pretty stacked there. And obviously you don't really want to go down the Japanese route, not at this point in your career, if you're Jorge Martin. So I think everyone wins in this situation. I think Aprilia have really won, but in the rider market sort of shuffle. And I think Jorge Martin will do a really good job there. Look, it's not the best bike, but we're going to find out if it is the best bike, aren't we? We are finally going to find out where that bike's at next year.
Yeah, that was what I was going to ask you next, Neil. I mean, do you think that it is such a good move for Martin? Obviously, he had to make the move to kind of progress his career because he had proved that he deserves a factory seat. But Aprilia, there's still some question marks around them, isn't there? Can they, as a unit, function as a championship-winning kind of team? Is the bike really that good? We've only seen flashes of it, but albeit with riders like Vinales and Espargaro who've never been super consistent in the past. I mean, how do you see that Aprilia situation?
Yeah, well, it is hard to judge, isn't it? Because what you said, anything Maverick's done, he's always been inconsistent, certainly in his MotoGP career. And Aleix has never been one of the main men. He's not been what you'd class as an A rider. He just hasn't been, has he? And that's not being harsh. It's true. Also, what about Aleix leaving? What about Aleix? I found this so funny. What about Aleix being Honda's test rider? Yeah. Is that not the funniest thing ever? For me, can I just say why? I just love this, right? Because self-proclaimed, I am the captain. I'm the captain. I am the captain. All right. This is our captain. What do Aprilia need now from their captain?
Yeah.
I'll tell you what they need from their captain. They need their captain to be a captain. He's retiring, but he's staying because he's our captain. He's staying with the team. He's gonna be. When we tested the new bike, he's going to say, "Oh yeah, this because it's much better than the old bike there." And no, he's gone. Whoa! The captain's looked at a bigger ship and gone, "I want to be the captain of that ship." So and the way he spun it, which I love, is my work here is done. And it's like, no, it's not. It's not. In fact, your work here now is more important right now. Yeah. Be the captain. Come on. Sorry,
Yeah.
it makes me laugh. So obviously he's gone to Honda. They're probably paying him a couple of million quid. I've no idea. They'll be paying him a lot as a test rider. I mean, if you think about it, they're desperate. Funny, isn't it? Sorry,
Yeah,
I've gone off on a
especially-
tangent as I normally do.
Yeah, no, that's completely fair. And especially when you think of Aprilia having, 3 new riders in all likelihood next year
Exactly.
from 4.
Yeah.
So it's more important than ever to probably have some continuity.
Exactly. That's why. Yeah. Sorry, like I said, I've gone off on a tangent.
So what about KTM? I mean, like, because it looked at the start of the season like they could be, really good, but it looks like their new Michelin. I mean, it caused everyone a lot of problems. And one of the things I thought was really interesting was that it was Jorge Martin who was the first person to say this new rear tire is giving us chatter. It's going to give us problems, and he was the first to actually get to start working on it. I think that made a lot of the difference at the start. And for me, again, that's really important because the riders that can identify the problems first are the ones that really are the most sensitive. I think it's a sign of a really, really sensitive and really, really good rider. But yeah, KTM just seemed to have sort of stalled. They had a reasonably good start to the season, then they've just not made any forward progress at all.
Yeah, it's probably the biggest head scratcher of the year. Most other things that have gone on, you can understand, but I don't understand what's gone on. Obviously, the season started and Pedro was walking on water, and I'm like,
yeah,
wow, what a difference! What I love about our sport is still the rider can make the difference.
Yeah.
So he was doing all the wonderful things, but then he's lost his way ever so slightly now, without being harsh on a rookie who's already had I don't know how many podiums, on the KTM, but. He does appear to have slightly lost his way. And it's almost like he's found the limit of the bike, but he's not prepared to accept it. So he's carried on pushing, and now he's starting to crash a little bit, isn't he? So, yeah, I feel sorry for KTM at the moment because they've got so many good riders, but they're just in a hole, aren't they? Really, they clearly need a step with that motorcycle.
Yeah, I feel like I'm probably asking you the most obvious question in the world here, Hodgie, but you've just mentioned him, Pedro Acosta. I think I remember speaking to you in France at Le Mans, and you were talking about your admiration for him, and you think he's basically the real deal. I mean, is he one of the guys that's going to be the top dog in MotoGP in the coming years? From what you've seen, do you think in the last couple of years since he's been in the World Championship?
Yeah. I mean, he's just unreal, isn't he? Gavin Emmett, who I work with at TNT Sport, I know obviously you know Gavin. He spent a full day with him in Mercia. I don't know what his little village is called, and I think they're going to be showing that this week, the weekend of Silverstone. Like it's like a day with Pedro and Gav. So he did the training in the morning in the gym, and then all afternoon he's on the go-kart track. But some of the footage I've seen from the go-kart track, I've seen some super slow-mos that they've sent through to me. I'll send it on to you guys, actually, just so you can see it. It's just incredible watching him on these go-kart tracks. I know you've seen it before, but when you see it in super slow-mo, you can really see. It's like, I never understood why all these MotoGP riders spend so much time on little bikes, playing around on little bikes. I never really got it until I watched the super slow-mos of Pedro, and then you can literally see what he's doing let's say in a safe environment. He's able to do that on a MotoGP bike. He's able to push the bike so close to the edge that he can obviously float the tires. So, I mean, he's just incredible. He's just an animal, isn't he? And obviously, he's a quote machine. He's perfect for media. And but he genuinely has got a hunger like I've not seen for a long time. Because he's very disappointed with his results, isn't he? Did he score himself a 5 out of 10 for the first half of the season?
Yeah.
Like, Jesus. But he means that as well. He's not a bullshitter, is he? It's like, oh, no, he means that.
I loved how he booked himself a plane ticket to Austria after the Sachsenring to kind of meet with everyone. You got the impression it was kind of because things weren't going well, and he was like, we need to get to the bottom of this. And it's like, mate, you're 19 or you've just turned 20.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, in his hand luggage, he was obviously carrying a couple of knuckle dusters and the various other sort of sharp and pointy instruments to try to provide a little bit of motivation because it was clear he felt people were letting him down a little bit. But yeah, he is. I mean, like he is. He's got that same sort of like cannibal instinct that Mark had, just wanting to win everything because yeah, that's what motivates a lot of these a lot of these riders. Just briefly about like the Japanese bikes. I mean, it seems to me like Honda are in a whole. I don't think things are going to get worse for Honda, but it's going to be a while before they start getting better. But I'm like oddly optimistic about Yamaha. It really feels like Yamaha have got everything sort of organised. They've got sort of all their ducks in a row, and now they can start to make progress, because you see the rate of progress that they've been bringing new parts has just been astonishing. I've never seen that with a Yamaha. I don't think ever in the sort of like 15, 16 years that I've been doing this.
Yeah, they've definitely switched the mindset, haven't they? They've poached some of the top Europeans, and they are definitely going in the right direction. That said, they're still miles off, aren't they?
Yeah, oh yeah.
And it's funny because after I'd spoken to Davide Tardozzi, I wanted to check his stat, what he was saying about Pecco. Since he won in 2021, he'd won nearly 50% of his races, which he hasn't. But like I said, Pecco had done really well. And you look back to 2022 and you're seeing, obviously, Fabio's up there all the time. Yeah. And like now, as a commentator, we're going, oh, I tell you what, Fabio's having a good weekend as he's battling for 8th. He's still miles off, isn't he? Like, they're miles off. So they are going in the right direction, absolutely. And they will get there, absolutely. But they're miles off. They're miles off. They're going to be nowhere next year. Yamaha will be nowhere next year.
Okay, I'm a little bit more optimistic, but then again, sort of like nowhere. The other thing is like, you say they're miles off, but miles off in MotoGP nowadays basically means
0.3.
Like, yeah, exactly.
It's true though, isn't it? If you point, but if you're 0.3 off, and you genuinely don't have that 0.3, which they don't have at the moment.
Yeah.
They are miles off. They're in another race, aren't they? Well, Fabio's battling for 8th. And I'll be commentating going, I tell you what, Yamaha are making some good steps forward. And you're like, well, actually, it was only 2 years ago that you were winning races.
Exactly.
It's like, it's I mean, it's going to help having a satellite team, definitely, having more info. And as for Honda, there's nothing to worry about. The captain's going there. So everything's sorted. He's going to go there. Captain will... That ship's going to be sailing off into the sunset.
Yeah,
oh, yeah.
Yeah. What, 1 year or 2 years before he says, my job here is done, do you think?
Oh, yeah. Well, we'll just wait till he's lost the front about 12 times and he'll be looking back at his old boat, which will look lovely then, the Aprilia, the Aprilia boat, and they'll be leading the championship with Jorge Martin, and he'll want to get back on that boat, won't he? I don't know. You've got to laugh, haven't you?
Right, well, what is it, 10, 12? Oh, no, I don't know. A week from now. Let's call it a week from now. We're going to be in Silverstone. My math, when you get old, then your math sort of goes off, but we'll see. Anyway, a week from now, we go to Silverstone. Now, you've ridden, we were talking about this before we started, about 1 million different variations of the track. How do you see? I mean, I think it's one of the best motorcycle racing tracks in the world. It's not so great for spectators because of its layout and all that, but the layout itself is just spectacular.
Yeah, could not agree more. It is amazing. It's got everything a MotoGP bike needs. It's got wide open corners that open themselves out. The track's wide. It's super safe. You can really attack it. It's got 4 fifth gear corners when you like that Maggots Beckett section when you approach that part of the track. You tip into Maggots at about 190 miles an hour. The bike feels heavy and you just fight it. Honestly, it's got everything. It's even got that little Mickey Mouse sort of section after turn. Is it Farm? Is that Farm?
Yeah.
You know, after the new start and finish first corner. Then that twisty section there, I forgot what it's called. Is it Village? Anyway, I should know.
No, it's Village. It's Village, I think.
Yeah.
Yes.
I'll do my homework before next weekend, don't worry. And I will have a track map in front of me with names on because my memory's pretty bad. But yeah, honestly, David, it is an outstanding outstanding motorcycle circuit, and it's billiard smooth. You can use all the curves. It's as good as it gets. It really is. And I'm not just saying that because it's like our home round. It is a special track.
Yeah, unfortunately, we don't have Cal Crutchlow this weekend. He was supposed to be doing a wild card, Neil. But we have obviously Jake Dixon, who should hopefully be challenging maybe for the podium, going off recent form in Moto2. Scott Ogden had a decent British Grand Prix there last year as well. Just like to know, your kind of experiences of going into home races, because I was just looking at your sort of career record before we came on the call here, and whether it was in 500s or your 1 year in MotoGP or your time in World Superbike, you always were able to raise your game ever so slightly for the home races, especially that year, when was it, 2000, when you were wildcarding and you had 2 victories in the World Championship. I'm just curious, how did you kind of approach those home races? Because that was a heyday of World Superbike when you had, roughly 100,000 people coming through the gates and huge expectations, So how was that? How did you kind of get yourself in the zone for those?
I used to feed off the fans. I used to feel the energy and the pressure, and I loved it. It was the most marvelous feeling. It's really hard to explain because I've tried to explain this one before. I always gave 100%. Of course, if I was racing in Japan, Australia, Spain, you give 100%. So how can you go to your home race and give more? You can't give more than 100%. But something happens inside you, and I said I can't put it into words, where you just find something. And I used to always be able to do it at my home races. And I wish I could perform like that more consistently throughout the year. If I'd have won quite a few more world titles if I was able to do that. But yeah, what a special feeling driving in on a Sunday morning and seeing all the fans and your name on banners and people dressed up in leathers and all that sort of stuff. Honestly, it's just an incredible feeling. I love my home race. I love the pressure of that.
So the added pressure would almost put you into a kind of a zone where you would be able to focus even more. Would that be sort of a way of explaining it?
Yeah, I had this weird thing. I've never said this out loud before, but every fan that I would see, that I'd say, good luck today, or good luck this weekend, or go and give him. It was almost like I took a little bit of it. It's really weird. And I genuinely enjoyed it. And I'm like, yeah, thank you. Or, it's like I stored everything up. And then it was like I could focus more. It was like I felt fitter and stronger on the bike. It was like everything was more precise and clearer, and it was easier. So, and it's true, Neil, you've looked at my career. Home races and wild cards made my career. So and even earlier, really early on in my career, like back in 1992, I did like a European 125 race. I'd not qualified for any round before. Turned up at Donington, I qualified near the back and finished 5th in the race, just because I was at my home race, and I've always been able to do that. So it's a weird one.
Which sort of makes me think that, we always used to say about Valentino Rossi that every single race was a home race for him.
Yeah,
and it's the same. Like when you go to sort of any race now, like there would be 1 million fans for Mark, there'll be 1 million fans now for Pedro. It's almost like they have that advantage at every single race.
I agree. Bloody ridiculous. In fact, Rossi wasn't that good, I don't think. It's just he had all the fans. It's almost like he was cheating, really. Is there anything we can do to take some points off him, go back and take some championships off him? No, but he's in a weird sort of way, all joking apart. He obviously was, and still is the most popular motorcycle racer. You go around, there's still more Rossi merchandise than anything else out there.
Yes, exactly. So, I mean, what do you think, who's going to win this weekend? I mean, we know the Aprilia is good around there. We know the Ducati is good everywhere. It should be a Yamaha track, but Yamaha are Yamaha. Are we going to see sort of like Aleix Espargaro's last gasp?
I don't think so. I think Aleix is done. And it sounds like this is like an anti-Aleix podcast. It's not. I like Aleix, by the way. It just makes me laugh, the captain bit. Anyway, we've covered that. What I've learned with motorcycle racing is normally the day you announce you're retiring, you will never quite as you can never produce that little bit extra. And he announced he was going to retire at his home race. He was incredible, and from that moment, we've not seen much from him. I think, and understandably, you make that, even though you don't realise, you make that mental switch of, no, it's not worth the risk. It's just, I won't risk it. This will do. You know what I mean? So I don't think Aleix will repeat his victory of 2023. How I see it going is I see Bagnaia. I see it being a Bagnaia weekend. I mean, weather pending. Weather looks good. The forecast looks good, but obviously it's the UK. Literally, every day I look at the weather forecast, and we've had no rain on the forecast for the last 2 weeks, and it's rained at least 6 or 7 of those days. You know what I mean? Like, so
exactly.
So I think if it's dry, I'm going for Bagnaia. I just feel like he's had them 4 wins in a row, and he just looks. I feel like he's gone up a gear. I really do. And with Martin crashing at the last one, you do also feel like, not that there's a big red button or the GG can turn bikes up or down, but if they've found anything, surely they're not going to give it to Jorge Martin now, are they?
No.
Anything that's going to make the 24 Ducati a little bit better, they're not, as we know. And you can't blame them.
Yeah, especially now. I mean,
especially now.
There's no reason to. I mean, like, apart from, I think also it would have been different. And I've said this before. It would have been different if Martin was still leading the championship. Then it's sort of like you have to, out of fairness, give him a chance to defend himself. But now, like you're putting your money on the dude who's going to be selling your bikes next year as well. You don't want that number 1 plate ending up on an Aprilia.
No, and we know how it works. We know.
Yeah,
don't we? That's just the reality of it. But yeah, so yeah, that's how I see it. I'm putting my money on Pecco. I know it's not a big woo. Here he is. Risk taker Hodgson.
That's right. Yeah. Ooh,
the guy who's won the last 4 races. He leads the World Championship. He won that. Well, he actually didn't win there last year, but you know what I mean. Like it's like yeah. So there you go. What about you two?
I'm kind of inclined to agree with you, Neil. I think Pecco's just hit that flow where everything just seems to be coming to him, and he's I don't know, he just seems mentally in such a good place as well. And as you say, the GP24 working so well. It's sort of tough to look past him, I think, for the rest of the year.
Yeah, just got married as well, which sort of can sort of focus your mind, gives you a little bit of like peace and quiet and all the rest of it. It's going to be interesting to see how Jorge Martin comes back as well, because like we've been away and you're coming back again. You've had a chance to reset and get over things. I mean, like sometimes I know some riders want to like literally be racing again next week to get another chance, and others can sort of like step back, put it aside, and then move forward again. So it is going to be very interesting. But I do think it is going to basically be the 3 Ducatis. It's going to be Pecco, Martin, and Mark for the rest of the year, and then we start to see what's what.
And maybe Maverick this weekend. Maybe.
Possibly Maverick. Depending on which Maverick turns up, as we know.
Yes.
Do you know what I'm looking forward to? The second half of the season is some inclement weather, going to some, as we do when we go over to the Far East. I love the mix that brings, riding on dirty tracks, and I get to this point in the season where we've been in Europe, and it's not that I'm bored because we've had a few breaks recently. I'm not bored of it, but. And I like something to just mix it up a little bit, because, again, sitting here, us 3, we all think it's going to be the top 3 in the championship are going to be at the front at the next race. And I know, do you know what I mean? It's nice to think, I tell you what, we're going to Australia, it's going to be freezing cold, or we're in Indonesia and it's going to be wet all weekend. How good's that? That's what I'm looking forward to, just to mix it up a little bit and make it a bit more entertaining.
Yeah, and all of a sudden Miguel Oliveira is on the front row, and or Jack Miller is refines himself and he's battling at the front. Just to mix things up. I mean, you know who's going to end up sort of like come out of the on top overall, sort of at the end of the year in Valencia. But there's like a few more, a little bit of weather to spice it up. It's great.
Yeah, and just very quickly, Neil, just before we sort of let you go. just a quick word on Jake Dixon. Obviously, I think you do some training with him. You're quite close with him. You know him quite well. And obviously, there's no dressing up. The start of this year was a disaster. But we've seen signs of him coming back to life, fighting for race wins in the last couple of weekends. And, last year's British GP was maybe not, well, it wasn't ideal for Jake. I think, a lot of things contributed to what happened. But I mean, it seems like he's coming into this year's edition in a pretty good place. And, it seems like he's got some interesting options on the table for next year as well, which I think is probably a good thing for him.
Yeah. I feel sorry for Jake because the start of this season was so important for him. If he had any chance of getting into MotoGP, obviously loads of contracts are up, as we know, and it all went wrong for him. And it wasn't his fault. It was the fact that the team had swapped suspension, as you know. Yeah. All the sort of KTM sort of teams had gone in the WP direction, and it threw everyone off. You look at someone like Vietti riding for the IO team, and Dennis Honshaw. I know he's a rookie, but everyone's struggled, haven't they? Really. So, and Jake's done the best out of all the WP suspension riders. So, it just meant that the start of the season's been a bit of a mess. He had that massive crash, didn't he, in Qatar, which was horrible, huge crash. Nobody wants one like that, and. But he's turned it round. He's done what I knew he would do. I mean, he's an incredible rider. So it's just a shame that we're going to be discussing Jake about him getting a Moto2 ride for next year. And it's just, I think he's 28 now, I think. So yeah. He's 29 next year. So are we going to say he's never going to MotoGP? Which is rubbish, isn't it? It's just like, that breaks me a little bit because... I'm a little bit bored of all the Spanish and Italians in MotoGP, and I understand they're the best in the world. We get it, but I just feel like I don't want to be watching a Spanish and Italian championship. So that's a shame for Jake. But yeah, I think he'll have he's obviously got a chance of winning the British Grand Prix, which would be the next best thing to not getting a MotoGP ride. Winning your home Grand Prix would be an incredible experience.
Exactly. It's also it's always really difficult because so much of a motorcycle or an athlete's career is about timing. It's about being in the right place at the right time and coming good at the right time. And the opportunity is just being there. And, it just doesn't look like. Also, because we're seeing a lot of contracts, all of the contracts which have been signed are all for pretty much for 2 years because everyone is looking at the 2027 regs and they just want stability until then. So I think there's a few riders, Jake probably among them, who might miss out just because of factors completely outside of their control. It's got nothing to do with their performance whatsoever. It's just that there's a whole bunch of people who are already signed, and the factories don't want to change anything because the rules are changing, and that's just the way it is, really.
Yeah, it's a shame.
Right. Well, thank you very much for your time, Neil. It's been great. It's been really, really. It's been a very enjoyable time.
Thanks, Dave. Sorry.
And thank you to you as well, Neil Hodgson.
Neil, we were saying earlier, weren't we? What a strong name.
Yeah, exactly.
I can't believe, right?
First man
the
on the
other week,
moon, right?
Yeah, I mean, and anyway, my wife said to me the other day, she went, no, not a right good name, is it, Neil? I went, you what? She went, well, it's not, is it? And I went, I've not really thought about it like that. She went, yeah. She went, you can't really imagine anyone now having a baby and calling their son Neil, can you? And when she said that, I sat and thought, well, no, she's right. So maybe it's not as, Neil Morrison, maybe it's not as good as we first thought. What do you think?
Yeah, she's maybe onto something there. Yeah,
I'm just glad I'm not called David. Now that's a bad name.
It is actually a terrible name. I was in a rugby team when I was a teenager, and there were 5 Davids on the team. So it was, but that was also useful because like someone would shout Dave, and you'd just throw the ball, and there would be a Dave there to pick it up because there was just a lot of us around. So yeah, that's it. Anyway, thank you very much. Looking forward to Silverstone just as the weekend.
Yeah, I love the home Grand Prix. Really looking forward to it. It's going to be brilliant. So, and thanks for having me on. I know you know, but I always listen to the Paddock Pass podcast. And I was telling my wife this before I came on. I said, I get all my information from the Paddock Pass podcast for TV. So I steal your guys all the homework you do. I look over your shoulder and definitely make some notes. So thanks for all the hard work you put in. I know you put in a lot of hard work.
Yeah, well, the invoice will be in the post, mate.
No problem. No, my pleasure. I'll buy you a beer, David, when I see you.
Excellent. Right, well, thank you very much, and, well, see you next week.
Yeah, see you next week. Thanks, guys.
Great stuff. You've made race predictions already for the weekend. I just wondered, I'm going to give you, in the spirit of generosity, Dave, I'm going to give you a chance to change your mind. Change your mind, or maybe add one to your prediction.
Are you suggesting that we would not simply come up with a name and stick with it through thick and thin, rather than just cycle through every single name on the grid? That's an outrageous suggestion. I think I've definitely changed my mind. Yes, like we were talking with Hodgie, I think that, it's hard to look past the Ducatis. It's hard to look past Pecco Bagnaia, but you just sort of like feel. I woke up this morning with a feeling that Maverick's roll of the dice is going to come up looking good this weekend. We know the Aprilia's sort of fast around the bike, around Silverstone. The layout really, really suits it. So, yeah, you just sort of like feel, Maverick.
Do you have that same Maverick feeling, Neil?
Yeah, I do. I think I maybe mentioned it with Hodgie, but this is one of his 3 or 4 great tracks on the calendar, and it's a historically brilliant track for Aprilia. And Aprilia wasn't just better than the rest last year; it was head and shoulders above the other machines at Silverstone. So I do think it's a great opportunity. Ducati have been so dominant in the last couple of race weekends that we've had. So yeah, I hope that for the series' sake that we can see another manufacturer up there fighting towards the front. I think Maverick could certainly be a podium charger, but yes, just with the kind of run that Pecco's been on recently, I think I'm going to stick with my original pick.
I picked Jorge Martin in the last GP in Sachsenring. I think I'll stick with him again. Why not? For the case of diversity, I'll stay with the Spaniard. And just for my 2 pennies worth on Silverstone, I kind of love it. I always think the MotoGP, in comparison to, you hear the Formula One and the British Grand Prix fills every seat at Silverstone, and you can imagine the atmosphere and the general buzz around the circuit because it's so vast. It's a really huge complex. And it does feel a little bit like MotoGP is just this tiny little tacked on cousin. And we're nowhere near the scope of the cars, which I guess is unsurprising because you have a host of Brits that are ready to win in Formula One, and therefore that brings the extra attention. Just the size of Silverstone as a facility means that MotoGP can seem a bit cavernous or meek, I suppose, in the scale of things. But I love the track, and I think also it's kind of unique on the MotoGP calendar. From the last 4 years, we've had 4 different manufacturers winning. Who can forget Alex Rins's fantastic victory against Marc Marquez on the last corner in Woodcote? There have been some surprise things. No one would have said really that Aleix would have been as good as he was over the full Grand Prix distance last year. It's a good round. It's a good crew there that work and organise everything. Thanks again for helping us with the competition tickets. We hope the winners get in touch with us and they'll enjoy the Grand Prix. Good Grand Prix, good race.
Speaking about the scale of things, it reminds me of Indianapolis as well, because there would be a decent crowd at Indianapolis when MotoGP was there. But the trouble is, it's a place built for 300,000 people. So when like 70,000 people turn up, it looks a little bit deserted. So the circuit sort of dwarfs it. And I love Silverstone. I think that in terms of the layout, it's just amazing. As I was saying with Hodgie, it's just an amazing layout. It's just that it's sort of in a bit of an unfortunate place, and it's big. There's no sort of elevation overlooking it to for the fans, so you're sort of stuck in grandstands and stuff. But the whole event is great. The the Day of Champions, and they put on, like, whenever I ride out, there's some band or other playing. They really do their best to put on a good event.
Dave, feel free to mute your microphone for this next bit. But Neil, have you thought about your Alpinestars Paddock Pass podcast fantasy team?
I've never stopped thinking about it, Ed. Every single day that I woke up over the summer holiday, it was at the forefront of my mind. How to climb back up the table and get towards Dave Emmett at the top.
On Discord, there's been a few comments about your progress.
Yes, exactly. Keep an eye out. But yes, I was actually ready to change, make some big changes in the Sachsenring, and then I think the fantasy website crashed 30 minutes before the cutoff, and therefore I had to keep the same team, and I thought that was going to be disastrous, and it actually worked out brilliantly. I was about to sub out Mark Marquez for Jorge Martin, so I would like to thank the gods at Dorna and their kind of computer HQ which controls this. And let's see if I have such luck again. But I'll have to give it a bit of a think. But at the moment, I've got Marquez and Bagnaia as my gold rider, so I think that's maybe a decent shot. Maybe it's worth throwing Maverick in there. Let's see how it goes Friday, Saturday morning as well.
I mentioned Discord. If you join us on Patreon, then you'll get access to a special community chat server where we interact with fans throughout the Grand Prix weekend and when we can during the week. So if you fancy just joining the community, then sign up on Patreon. We have 3 different tiers, and there's extra content coming. Of course, we have the first note show from Silverstone on Thursday. The full show will be available to patrons. We'll put a slice of it up on SoundCloud so people can listen. Usually we try and get another journalist or another figure from the paddock on the show just to give us some insight that can be quite entertaining at times. And then, of course, the note shows throughout the rest of the Grand Prix weekend and any interviews that we can throw up there and some bench racing topics as well now and again. One more topic, guys, I just want to get your opinion on. World Ducati Week, Dave. Good old Mark, eh? I mean, he stoked the fire. He managed to get some attention. And it does seem a bit bizarre that they would throw all those riders on similar Panigales and say, well, go on, lads, have a crack. Because there inevitably is going to be some, cock swinging, right?
I mean, I famously posted on Twitter that it wasn't matter and everyone had been told to be good boys, but apparently not everyone was listening. But like World Ducati Week, it's absolutely fantastic event, absolutely great. But I paid zero attention to the race itself because it's meaningless. It doesn't really mean anything. But props to Mark for finding a way through knocking Nicola Bulaga off and just raising a lot of hype about the whole thing.
Yeah, we saw the MotoGP world champion Pecco Bagnaia got married, and I guess that was his honeymoon, right? Drive straight to Misano World Circuit and take part in World Ducati League. So I hope he's got something a little bit more relaxing coming up post season. But still, I mean, Bagnaia's just winning everything. I mean, sort of an amazing girl, a celebrity wedding on the cover of Vogue Italy, and then of course appeasing all the Ducati hordes at Misano. I mean, we didn't bother doing any predictions for the first Misano Grand Prix, and based on this, somebody for the VR46 Academy, and that's it.
I mean, it's going to be Pecco Bagnaia, isn't it? It's going to be sort of basically Pecco Bagnaia for both races.
Oh, I forgot to say, incidentally, we're talking about the Alpinestars Paddock Pass Podcast Fantasy League, and here at Lommel over the weekend, they presented their Tech Air motocross unit, which is actually a pre-production model. You won't be able to buy it until 2025, but I was really surprised that I thought, how are they going to sort of condense this thing into, because I mean, obviously, as soon as you jump on a dirt bike, you're in the realms of what could be a crash. And it's been well over 10 years of data collection to fashion this algorithm. And it looks just like a chest and back protector. So to be able to condense the technology and the canisters and everything, the whole sort of ECU into this package was really impressive. And they had some of the factory riders from Yamaha, KTM talking about it, saying that the first prototype they tried was really heavy. And since then, Alpinestars slimmed it right down. And now you barely notice it over a chest and back protector. I think it's just phenomenal stuff. So it'll be good to give it a try out, I think.
Yeah, and also it's really interesting because it must be so much more difficult to predict a crash, to tell a crash from just getting sort of generally flung up or flung up in the air sort of thing. So it's especially motocross because of the way that the tracks are. So yeah, that is. I mean, I find that whole algorithmic side of it really fascinating. That's the really interesting part of the whole thing.
Neil, take it easy on the Guinness. Don't go too mad before you get over to the mainland, and you're forced to quaff some piss weak English lager. So
I haven't promised anything. And we're staying above a pub as well, Ed. So I'll be applying the same cautionary tale to yourself during this weekend.
Yeah, I'm looking some education on the finer arts of ales. I won't complain about that one. But guys, good to speak. We're gonna sign off now and embark on our various travels to get to Silverstone. Thank you to flyracingrenthal.com and to KTM. We'll be back with our first note show on Thursday from the historic circuit of Silverstone.